Hey, I'm Mike Priest, the founder and CEO of Visible. As you scale your company, having the right guides at your side can make all of the difference. Each episode, we'll talk to fellow founders, investors, and experts. We'll dive into their zone of genius, as well as hear about their past mistakes to give you a better chance at success. This podcast is for founders by founders. This is the Founders Forward.
Nick, so just to get started here, give us the 1-minute pitch on yourself and PeakMetrics and what you're up to.
Hey, Clay. Thanks for having me. My name's Nick. I'm the CEO and co-founder of PeakMetrics. At PeakMetrics, we've basically built a platform that takes in a massive amount of online news and social media data. And then we process that to identify the different narratives that exist and how they're spreading online. So basically trying to answer this question of, like, how does something start on a random subreddit and then end up on the New York Times later that week? How do we trace sort of every step of that way?
That is awesome. Who's the primary target customer for this? Is it more like hedge fund guys now, or is it kind of a mix of different types of personas?
Yeah, our core focus so far has been primarily marketing teams at large brands. So trying to understand consumer sentiment and consumer trends. But we've also been used for tackling more complex societal issues. We've worked with public affairs teams and government organizations to tackle misinformation, for example, trying to track those online trends.
Yeah, makes sense. So you've been doing this for a while now. Obviously, have gotten over the cold start problem. You want to talk about that a little bit more and just how you got over that and acquired your first customer?
Yeah, totally. I feel like that's always such a tricky question. I think for us, the simplest answer was by just talking to customers. We've gone through a couple accelerators that did a really great job of forcing us out of sort of the product and engineering mindset and into, the talking to customers mindset. Techstars we did a couple of years ago, and like in the first 2 weeks, we had to talk to 100 potential customers, which is kind of insane.
Yeah.
But it wasn't ever for a sale. It was always just every conversation we had, understanding customer problems better. The next sort of set of conversations, we just had a better grasp on what sort of the customer problems were. And by the tail end of those conversations, the customers we were talking to, or potential customers, were basically just begging for the solution because we had gotten to know the customer type so well.
Yeah. I think that's really smart. How'd you go about just finding those target customers? Was it mostly just through subreddits or like different little pockets of the internet, or were you like, how structured were you with finding the people to get in front of?
Yeah, so like we basically built out a matrix of like what we thought was our ideal customer across different titles and industries. And then we went through our own just LinkedIn network and our mentors networks. And even if it was a second or third connection, just asking for sort of a path to the type of people we wanted to talk to was what we did. And then as we learned more about sort of who our customers were, we could start to check, people off the list or cross potential industries off. So that's how we did it.
Yeah, I like that. Makes a lot of sense. Jumping around a little bit here, but what would be one piece of advice that you could give for someone starting a company, if you can narrow it down to one?
Yeah, totally.
That might be a loaded answer.
Yeah, I think from my experience, the best advice doesn't usually come in the form of direct advice. It's usually been in listening to stories from other entrepreneurs or other mentors of what's worked for them or what hasn't worked for them. So I feel like, a lot of people will dictate like what to do in a particular situation. And that's really tough because they don't have the context or the same information that you do, or, times change as well. So usually when I'm looking for personally advice, I'm asking, a few good mentors or advisors on what they've seen in the past and what's worked for them and what hasn't, and then parsed out like, okay, from that, here's what applies to me in my particular situation. And there's a big difference in sort of that output.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I mean, you said you went through 2 accelerators, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that probably helped a lot with just like surrounding yourself with the right people. Have you also sought after like other online communities and just like stay engaged with those just to continue to expand your network and get more advice from different sources on the internet?
Yeah, totally. I have like, different communities of, at least in my buckets, it's like mentors, advisors, other entrepreneurs. And whether those are one-on-one relationships or like small communities, all of those are super valuable. And I think this particular framework too of asking for advice in the context of experience, it's a good way to like facilitate communication with a bunch of type A personalities, right? When you have a bunch of CEOs, in a room, a lot of people have type A personalities, and a lot of people I think want to give, just very direct advice, but it's a different tone when you're saying, this is what happened to me, and here's why I'm, suggesting that like, this is not necessarily the best path.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's all first world experience. I mean, that's like
Totally.
that's the type of advice you want.
And I think it also like makes us all human, right? Like it's a much more empathetic way of having a conversation of like, this is something that I personally experienced.
Yeah. Seems like all CEOs, well, it's a generalist statement, most CEOs have a lot of vulnerability and just like want to help the next generation, which I think is what makes startup world great.
Totally. I hope so. I mean, there's very few industries that are so proactively helpful to each other, and it's competitive, but there's enough support within sort of the industry that I think that's great.
Yeah, you like talk to friends in other industries and like you ask about what their process is for getting like insights or tips from other peers working at different groups, and it's like they would never do that, and it just seems so foreign. That seems so foreign for people in startup where it's like, oh, I just like ask random strangers for advice all the time and I like take it. So,
and I think part of the superpower of like a small startup or like an early stage startup is that you get to play the non-threatening, like really just trying to understand how to build something card, which is a huge deal. You can't necessarily do that as a big company.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. What's a small change that you've made that's made a big difference in your life?
I recently moved and I got like a slightly bigger desk and just like cleared out all the crap that I had, like all of the paperwork. So as cliche as it is, like new year, new clean, fresh start on the desk. Now when I like come into my little home office, I guess, being able to just only have like my keyboard, my mouse, and like a couple things on the desk, it feels pretty good.
Yeah, I should probably try that. I'm not even going to show you my desk right now because there's really trash everywhere. There's so much clutter. It's tough to think straight.
Yeah, I literally have like papers on my desk that had coffee spilled on them. I was just like, this is no good. Need to try something different.
Yeah, I should probably do that. Okay, then last question we got. If you had one ask for our listeners, what would it be?
So we're in the business of predicting online trends. If you see an online trend that you want to learn more about, like we're starting to think more about how do we break down some of what's happening, in sort of online culture. So tweet it at me. I would love to hear more about what you're thinking about. My handle's Loui, Nloui.
Awesome. We'll include all that. Well, Nick, this has been great. This is quick hitting. I told you I didn't want to eat up too much of your time. Anything else that I can help with though? Like we'll remove all this from the podcast. But anything else that I can help with? Are you guys like looking to raise anytime soon? You looking for intros to VCs, customer intros, like?
For sure. At some point in the coming months, definitely. I think, no immediate asks, but love that you guys are thinking about that and thinking about how to support your customers and create community. Would love to just see more of that. Awesome.
Yeah. We're like taking a play out of MicroAcquire's playbook. I don't know if you've been following them at all, but they actually launched a publication called Bootstrappers, where it's just like telling the stories of their customers. And it's like, there's no downside of doing that. So it's an additional piece of content, provides goodwill with our customer base. And I don't know, like I'm learning a lot doing this. So literally no downside, like asymmetric bets.
It's a win-win.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, cool, man. Thanks again so much for coming on and saying yes to my cold email.
Easy. Yeah. Hope it was long enough and so sort of the format you wanted. But yeah.
Well, cool. I'll let you get back to it.
Sounds good. Enjoy Costa Rica.
Yeah, I will.
Very jealous.
All right, man.
All right. Later.